Judges, talk meat. This is also difficult on my ego, but it's only reasonable that a continent that makes no concerted efforts to create wealth and liberate its own citizens can be a lifeline and a survival tool for others. And on energy, Africa has only 9% of the world's crude oil reserves. It doesn't matter how much they are producing for the rest of the world. But they are heavily dependent on it. Just likewise with minerals, there's heavy dependence on the revenue that is being generated from this. And we become pawns rather than partners to the West. Unlike in the Middle East, where they hold the keys to 56% of the crude oil reserves, Russia is also heavily blessed with minerals. The fact is that these countries are better dependable allies for the West because of a stable political climate. And when you're talking about democracy, please remember that every country that's taken up democracy is benefiting from it. So it's actually the West that's giving this to us. On food security, the United Nations University has just recently told us that at the rate of soil degradation in Africa, by 2025, Africa's soil can only feed 25% of its population. So it's only reasonable that the West will do something about this. They are seeking land deals in developing countries. But Africa is not the choice. They're going to East Asia, in Thailand and Cambodia, other countries like Kazakhstan, because the fact is that the stable socioeconomic climate there makes those countries attractive. Despite our population, which we refer to as a good source of resources, I can tell you that poor education and disease limits the value of this. Thank you. Africa has only 9% of the world's reserve of oil. If they are producing more than 9% that the world needs, that means they are overly dependent on it and is out of the need to just generate a revenue. They cannot use it to negotiate on the world stage, and that's a disadvantage. Just like man cannot live by bread alone, the world cannot survive by raw materials alone. So please let us produce something new. All countries, all continents are interdependent. The point is, you should not be in the negative balance. Africa is in negative balance. We depend on the West for science and technology, for health, for skilled manpower. The tables are clearly turned against us. The West is focusing on the emerging powers now. And that is not because of their resources, let me remind you, it's because of a stable economy. Let us do something about our foreign policy. Let us develop a foreign policy that supports commercial trade and trust. Until then, let Africa reverse its statistics on growth and show responsibility. Until then, we don't have a place in the world economy. Thank you.
Ibipo, I like the way that you began. It was a kind of dagger inside approach, because you said, this will be difficult on my ego, suggesting that your opponent had problems with his ego when he was talking about his particular point of view. Good. I also like your clarion call, let us produce something new. And then you focused in on what the issue is, that Africa is, in fact, according to your speech, dependent on the West. Well done.
Fellow Africans, our continent still lies in the wake of old chapters of military dictatorships and conflicts, still trapped in the present chapter of poor leadership and corruption, and we cannot deny the future challenges of meeting the needs of the 21st century. As citizens, we have been the architects of our fate. Throughout history, we have produced some of the strongest kingdoms, from the Golden Kingdom of Ghana to the great Empire of Benin, and the strong Zulu nation. Likewise, we are responsible for the decline of this continent out of greed, indiscipline, and corruption. Consequently, the West half-heartedly sees Africa through the lens of despair, handing down aid. Mr. Tony Blair pitifully described us as a scar on the conscience of the world. But these must now be in the old chapters, because today we must awaken our sense of discipline and responsibility. We must put in perspective the glorious benefits of a stronger Africa. We must take on a government that's still wallowing in the muck of irresponsibility, because in the words of Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will. Let us work together for change to bring forth the Africa of our dreams. Thank you.
Ibipo. Very well put, very passionate, and that's the key. If I have an issue, you didn't really define this paradigm shift. Is it a forward shift or a backward shift to our traditional values when we seemed to be more organized and more accountable? But all in all, well done.